Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon. We're almost there. I have to buy some time for this gentleman named Joshua Goldstein coming up on the stage. And he's a solution engineer at Seldon.io. As you think about getting your models to production, I highly encourage you to actually check out that open source project, microservices based, deploying your models. And I hope you've been enjoying yourself today so far as I kill a little bit of time before Josh gets here. And I think if there are folks in the room that are thinking about what's maybe a next career transition, it's cool that Josh is a solution engineer at Seldon doing machine learning and having different types of backgrounds getting into that as well. He definitely has some interesting images in his talk today, so as he makes his way up here. All right.
Thank you, sir. Wow, okay. End of the day, we're here. Last talk, a little bit more Mark, and then reception time. So thanks, Mark, for the intro. As Mark said, I'm Josh Goldstein. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. I work for Seldon.io, the company behind the open source technology Seldon Core. I've been in the various search spaces and MLOps space for about 10 years now. And today we're going to talk about, at a high level, just you guys have done all this hard work. You guys have been working very hard on these models, getting everything, getting your feature stores managed, getting the model saved in the right format, getting your inputs. But then what? What do you do? So we'll go from from getting that model to microservice. So y'all are really good at this. Writing code, getting that great model at play. You're also pretty good at this too. Saving models, not the most hard thing to do in the world. But then what? So what do you do after that? So I do have a question for everyone here. Who here likes writing a Flask wrapper? That's what I thought. So this is something that you don't want to do. So why would you want to do that? Why don't you find technology that will allow you to have that flexibility around and the ease of use to deploy these models once you've done that hard work? So then you don't have to take that next 6 weeks and build that Flask wrapper. Some other challenges that do happen is you then have to start thinking about, okay, what type of inferencing is going on? Am I using online, real time? Am I using batch? Do I need to be streaming with Kafka or Knative? Some of these models, they're really large, as well as with the regulations in certain industries come around having explainability, drift detection, outlier detection for things like a fraud detector in a finance institution. Some things need pre-processing, post-processing around text, around a lot of NLP use cases, tokenizing, getting the vectors in the right format so the classification engine can do its thing. Having some standardization across the organization as well. A lot of the organizations here today, you're pretty big. There's a lot of business units around, a lot of different tech going, and having some sort of semblance and some consistency is always the end goal that you try to achieve, and I know it's a really tough one to do with companies of that size, but having some of that standardization, and then, and of course, scale. Why keep the lights on? How, when that 15 million requests per second turns to 30 million requests per second in about an hour, how are you going to handle that and how are you going to make that work? A lot of these challenges are not new. We've known about them for a while, whether they look in the ML space or just as deploying any software as a whole. They can be also used taking some of those best practices that we've learned over the years and applying them within the MLOps space to have that proper deployment. So I don't know if I'm sure many people sorry. Yeah, I'm fine. The paradigm around what a machine learning lifecycle would look like. So on the left-hand side, seeing you have your configuration, your data collection, your data verification, that feature extraction. But then when you see in the green, this is all the stuff that you have to do next. So about 5 years ago, everyone was building AI. Oh, we got these great models. Now what? What are we going to do with them? So by leveraging things like a Seldon Core or other cloud providers with their engines as well, having the ability to maintain those resources, maintain the serving, and also keep that quality control with monitoring so you don't start having inaccurate predictions, which would lead to losses of revenue usually. So how do we do this? Kubernetes. Kubernetes is key, as when Kubernetes was released, it has really opened the world to allowing things to scale and allow you to sit at home at night when those scale events happen and know comfortably, somewhat comfortably, that your model is going to scale up and stay alive so you don't have to wake up at 3 in the morning and have to go troubleshoot something or get that alert from your boss or an angry customer. So with Seldon Core, the technology that I work for, but among others in the space, having the deployments available on Kubernetes for that scale allows for the monitoring. Having within the technology, what you want to look for is, does it have API endpoints? So like I was referring to those Flask wrappers, no one wants to write those, so coming out of the box with something having gRPC, REST, and other abilities to enable yourself to leverage and really hit those endpoints from whatever way that you really want to. Another cool feature that you would really be looking to interest when you're implementing something like this is also inference graph pipelines, so more of like a step-by-step should you need to multi-chain models in terms of pre-processing and post-processing, what goes first, what comes with the prediction, what comes next, and so on. Runtime flexibility. Another key point to look for as well. Like I said before, a lot of organizations, a lot of different data scientists, a lot of different technologies being used, whether it be TensorFlow, scikit-learn, LightGBM, XGBoost, as well as some of those higher level, more flexible frameworks like an MLflow, a Triton, and then Seldon's ML server as well, leveraging all that deep learning, and I'm sure a lot of you know and love the experimentation of MLflow. So, having an ease of use of a single deployment. A deployment, trying to make this least amount of touch as possible. So I want to do a little bit, not a lot, but also still have all that power. So by data scientists working with the DevOps ML engineers, having the ability to create a simple file or a simple set of instructions, whether it be through a Python SDK, some sort of SDK, API, or going straight into Kubernetes and the YAML itself, having the ability to define these models, the implementations, the types, as well as that ground, giving those step-by-step instructions on what you want to do. Here's an example of what this graph would look like in order for a very simple inference graph around just daisy chaining 2 models. You have the prediction, you come in, you have your first model, then you would want to come out, and at that second model, you'd want to make a second prediction before returning it to a user. An example of this could be a recommendations engine as well. So a preprocessor that'll come in, tokenize, then go out to the model, the AI model itself, look for those recommendations, bring those recommendation doc IDs back, and then in that subsequent model or post-processing step, you'd be able to go out and fetch those actual documents or products if it's an e-commerce use case, and bring those back and return those instead of just a bunch of numbers or some unlegible text. Support for model metadata also. You want to look for this as well because as you go through your cycle, you're going to start having training data versions, training data dates, and all sorts of other metrics that you would like to see. So having the ability to also at input time and inference time, but also when you deploy these models so that when you're looking in this production model, seeing what's happening, you'll have that metadata say, okay, this model on this date, it was run with this training data, and this is where the model lives in my storage area. And then on the other side, in the inference side, on the prediction side, having the ability to do things like set the metadata. For instance, if you're doing a quality classification off an assembly line and you have plants in Ohio, New York, and Florida, you want to tag some of those requests and say, hey, I want to tell the system and see the breakdown between all 3 of those different, where the predictions are coming from those 3 different facilities. Automated metrics. Metrics are key in enterprises. Everyone in the enterprise loves their metrics. They love their pretty pictures. They love their visualizations. So having the ability also in that either centralized area or within your deployment itself, having the ability to visualize this, take action on it. Certain technologies, some certain open sources with things like a Prometheus Alert Manager, monitoring these metrics, sending alerts using PagerDuty or email or Slack, or even at that point kicking off a retraining job, should you so see within your deployments as well. Another key point for this comes on that monitoring side as well, where if you did have those key metrics, like a drift, or you see outliers happening for an hour or two, you can either get a call to action or even kick off, if you know that this is a common thing that happens, having the ability to have that retrain going over for you. And then there's more. There's always more. You need to auto-scale everything. Everything within that cluster, that deployment, auto-scale. Having that auto-scaling, so not only would that auto-scaling be for your model itself, but as per regulations and things coming and monitoring becoming more popular and more prominent and required in putting models into production, having all of those components scale as well so that it can handle the loads that y'all are trying to achieve during some of the more heavier inference requests. Another thing that you would want to look for also is customizations, some sort of flexibility around language wrappers. So having the ability to take your model, take some arbitrary code, package it up really quickly, and then deploy it is something that would be easier than having to go in, write the full fast API or Flask API, put all the metricing in, send all the database connections, and do all of that fun stuff, as opposed to just finding a tool that will just wrap all of this together in 3 commands, have it all uploaded and ready to go. Another big thing about what you're also looking for is latency, the streaming, and the batch processing. So trying to make sure that you have all of these prescripted and you have thought about when you're going into these use cases, that you've thought a lot of this through. Okay, and now more. There's still more. So now that we've deployed the model, one of the things that we want to do is usually have explainers per the previous presentation before, the great outlier detector and drift detection, as well as that explainability. So personally, when I first saw this slide, this is an example of an explainer, why this review was a negative review. You can see here that in the review, the words terrified and protest are the words that indicated that this was a negative review. Now, personally, if my parents read me a bedtime story with that mask on, I'd have nightmares for the rest of my life. So having these kind of componentries as well, in complementary to your model, will help not only on that regulation, also in use cases like a customer service, where a customer would call and ask, why is this fraud? What contributed to this indication that you think that bank ABC, this is fraud? And finally, unseen data. So having that outlier and drift also within scalable MLOps endpoint for that model, having the ability within the tools to identify that outlier, identify that drift, and well as alert on it. So trying to make sure that you have all of this infrastructure set up to be able to monitor, maintain, and have insight into what's actually going on with your models every day. Okay, I know I'm a little ahead of schedule. I can open up for questions if they have any.
Any questions? So you're saying no one here is deploying a model?
No one wants to deploy models?
I missed a lot of this, but I'm curious. I know it's because I get an emergency. But I know a little bit about what Seldon does. I have a question for him.
Okay, go for it.
From my boss, actually. So, Good to see you again. I worked with him back in the day at LucidWorks. Now, we have tried to use Seldon exploratorily at MongoDB for a few different things. And I'm curious on the plans to make it more accessible, to expose community models or like a repository of tools so we can try different things out quickly, iterate quickly on them.
Are you trying to make it easier for yourself? Is that what
Yeah,
you're asking?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the stuff that's coming, and we actually do work, the Seldon team does work with the likes of NVIDIA, the MLflow team, and others on some of the standardizations around things like we have a V2 format coming out, which is a type-safe format, in order to make sure. I was actually doing some work the other day where the type-safing came right into play, and we spent hours trying to troubleshoot it. Other things around, one of our new open source projects is called ML Server. It's a next generation around building those custom wrappers, as well as enabling things like multi-model serving for resourcing, as well as the custom logic. There's tools around also, so you can do, while running some of those A/B tests as well, having the ability to write some of that having to write custom arbitrary logic, so that things like sticky sessions. So if I'm using a shadow, or I'm trying to roll out my new recommendations engine, I can send my majority of my users from the Northeast always to the original rec engine, while I can send all the Southeast users that are coming in, I can send them to that new recommendation.
So I had a question about multi-tenancy support. So dealing with different models per customer and different stream processing per customer. Is that part of something that Seldon offers right now or on your roadmap?
It's actually kind of more of our enterprise aspect. So no, I know we don't want to really talk about the enterprise, but yeah, there is work being done on exploring and making sure that that becomes a reality.
All right, I'm just going to let you stand awkwardly there on the stage. Just kidding. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.